DLC.
Marcus, what has been on your playlist this week?
Man, this is always a loaded question because I feel like we're always playing a lot of things. But I recently wrapped up and reviewed Botany Manor, which is
Yeah,
a
I've been curious about this. I've seen it on Steam and been tempted by it. Did you enjoy it?
yeah. I gave it an 8.75 out of 10, which is really good on our review scale. And it's a game I've been looking forward to for a while, like as a fan of puzzle games and sort of adventure games like this, where it's a first-person game set in Victorian England, where you're playing as this botanist who lives in like a 15th or 16th century manor that is like this big elaborate manor that, and she's just trying to finish her botany research book. And like I mentioned, it's a puzzle game, but the puzzles are trying to figure out how to grow a selection of like exotic flowers. So like every flower is its own puzzle in the sense that they each require the same starting components of like you take a pot, put some dirt in it, put the seed in, you water it, but how do you make it grow? Like, what else does that plant need to grow? And so you're going around this manor and sort of adventure game style where you're finding keys to unlock doors and you're reading a lot of like notes and letters and just a lot of environmental storytelling as well as like puzzle solving. And you're using the things that you find to piece together what that flower needs to grow. So it's a lot of just look observant of like, okay, like this flower, and all the flowers are like really fantastical too, or like, oh, this one flower only grows during lightning storms. So I need to create the flash of lightning to get this to grow. How do I do that?
Oh,
Well,
wow.
what if I use a camera flash? Okay, how do I create flash powder? So there's a lot of like working
That's
backwards,
cool.
basically, and then like finding all of these elaborate solutions to grow these plants. And in your book, it's collecting all the clues that you find, and then you're slotting in the clues because each flower has like a requisite number of clues. So you're like, okay, I found like 5 letters. Let me put them here and see if they relate. And thankfully, the game lets you know when you found all the clues that you need. So it kind of takes the guesswork out of like whether or not does this clue apply to this other flower. It's just like no, it's only for this one. And then once you have everything you need, it says, okay, now just figure out how it all makes sense. Like how does it all connect? And I love it because one, it's a very cozy game. If you've seen it, it's got a very vibrant art direction. Like the closest comparison I can give it to is like something like The Witness, just in terms of like the color palette, like very bright, kind of like primary color, especially when you're outside and you're looking at trees and stuff. It's got a very relaxing soundtrack, like very ambient, with like some very sparse like piano melodies in there. So it's like a very like I treated it as my like after work late at night game where I'm just unwinding. I'm just gonna walk around this very pretty like mansion and just solve some puzzles that are like a great balance of not being too challenging, but also like being challenging enough to like an engaging amount of challenging. Like, oh, okay, you've got to do some real sort of like thinking outside the box in some instances and doing some like in my opinion like very fun like dot connecting, especially as you get later on in the game where you're like, okay, this you're finding things where like there's like this solution is very elaborate and it requires like certain devices, and it's like the game just sort of like relies on you or trusts you enough to take things that seem tangentially related and finding the sort of like right order of operations to get your weird bioluminescent flower to sprout and have vines snake all over the place. And like just seeing your flowers grow when you figure it out is like it's already that fun like aha moment just to solve it, but then just see the visual flourish of like your flower doing whatever its like thing is. You're like, oh, that's cool. It almost makes me want to go buy a pot and like plant. And I'm famously bad at gardening. But something about this game made me go like, maybe I should give it another shot. It does seem kind of relaxing, even though it's not gonna do some wondrous thing like it is in the game. But it's like,
What a cool idea for a sort of a puzzle is how do you get something to grow? I think that's a really cool idea. It's like somebody took one of Harry Potter's classes and made a whole game out of it.
yeah. And it also tells like a nice little underlying story about the character where you're finding notes sort of like illuminating her struggle with trying to be respected in what is still a male dominated field of like academics, where like you're finding letters of her getting rejected at like different academies because she's a woman. Like there's like one note where the guy like very condescendingly is like telling her like maybe you should do like something more basic because that's like what that fits your skill set better. And you see it like it's on like that letter is in the pile of like kindling next to her fireplace. So it's like, oh, she's gonna burn that thing. Like she's just like, screw that. And I just like that, you know, like there's no voice acting or anything, but I love that kind of storytelling where like the game does a good job establishing Arabella as the character's personality and like her story without needing to say a word. So even if something you find isn't necessary for the puzzle, it does help flesh out and also contextualize why you're doing it, and at least for me, sort of like add like motivation of like, yeah, let's show them, let's show them what we can do. Let's grow these flowers that everyone doesn't know how to grow because they were like lost to time or they're like hard to figure out. Let's do it.
That's awesome.
This game this game needs a Tomb Raider crossover because when it was announced, when I saw it, I was just thinking, oh, this is Lara when she's not raiding tombs. Like Power Wash Simulator got all of its crossovers. Just give me, you know, Lara gets the seeds from somewhere, and that's all part of this adventure is putting this stuff together.
See, it's wild that you say that, Christian, because Balloon Studios is the developer. The woman who's the head, she said that this game was directly inspired by the mansion in Tomb Raider 2. Like she said, the core premise was, what if Tomb Raider 2 was just the mansion part? Because when she played it as a kid, she loved just exploring the manor and just like took that idea and just like, I guess, grew it out from there. So
that's awesome.
So to speak.
Yeah.
Again, that's called Botany Manor. It's one of the things on Marcus's playlist. What else?
You can get the full audio version of this show by subscribing to the RSS feed, which you can find at dlcpod.com. And you can support the show on Patreon at patreon.com/dlcpod, where you will get ad-free versions of the show, video versions of the show on demand, and a whole bunch of extra content, like Wednesday's show, paid DLC, including spoiler chats, so much more. That's patreon.com/dlcpod.